Save the Semantics, episode 70. It is April 21st, 2019. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I mostly talk about, there's no real specific topic by which I talk about. This is the podcast where there's really no sense of direction. There we go. I just realized this, but it was such a missed opportunity to do this. I could have held off on this, but last week's episode was episode 69. Yesterday was 420. If I had recorded last week's episode yesterday, that would have been perfect. You know, it's just a missed opportunity right there, but it's okay. It's all right. Sometimes you just gotta, you gotta hold off on the jokery, hold off on the jokes and whatnot, and just save some time for yourself instead. Anyways, today is indeed the day after 420, the 21st. I'm not entirely sure what real significance this day holds, what historical events happen on this day and whatnot, I'm not entirely sure of that. But yeah, it's a nice day out. Spring is, or what is it? We're in April, so yeah, spring has finally started to come around in a way, flowers are blooming, weeds are growing, people are smoking weed, that kind of thing, spring has come around. Although it was kind of cloudy, it's kind of this weird murky weather yesterday, so I'm not really quite sure what that means. But yeah, that's just your weekly weather update. It's not like you can just kind of do that on your phone or on your computer and whatnot, you can just kind of do that in your own time without me telling you what the weather is. But yeah, I just wanted to make note that it's relatively nice out at the moment. And yeah, yesterday was indeed 420. I didn't really do a whole lot to celebrate or anything like that, mainly because I was just keeping busy with work. But I thought it was kind of funny. Like, I made note of this to my coworkers, but it's just kind of funny how much people sort of celebrate it as like a kind of this like holiday of sorts. People dress up for it and stuff, they got the Rastafarian colors going on. Which, I don't know, people, I'm not entirely sure like their significance of that, or like how nowadays people might consider that to be kind of culturally insensitive, maybe. I don't know. I just think that's kind of funny. Like guys do that. The girls were like dressing up in like kind of, like the ones that were like walking around and stuff, like they were dressed up in like summer, spring clothing, floral dresses and stuff like that, robes and whatnot. I think it's just kind of funny. It's like it's Halloween for stoners in a way. They just kind of dress up in the way they don't normally do, and voila, there you go. They got a costume right there, dressing up as themselves in a way. I don't really have like much. I don't know what like train of thought I was going off with there. I was gonna say I don't really have much against the whole day in general. I just think it's just kind of funny, I guess. But I do think it's kind of interesting how like people sort of I'm not entirely even sure what the history of the event is really, right? Like, if you look up historical dates for like 420, it's like, yeah, it's kind of been, I talked about it last year, but like, Hitler's birthday and some other crazy shit happened on this date and so forth, right? But yeah, I haven't really done much research. Like, I don't really care enough about it to really warrant me like looking up specific events that happened on this day. I'm sure it was just sort of a progression of events that led up to now this being the celebrated wheat day. That's just kind of how things are. But for the most part, outside of yesterday. You know, things have been kind of mellow for the most part. No, like, I'm not trying to make a joke or anything, but things have been relatively mellow. Not a whole lot has been going on at all, really. Once again, haven't really invested much time into media, so I don't really have a whole lot to talk about there, unfortunately. But actually, no, that's not true. I'm a pretty big fan of Saba. He's a rapper from Chicago, and he's part of this collective called Pivot Gang. He's sort of like the main persona around it. Him and his like brother and other members of his posse have sort of like formed a collective, and they released an album just last week, and I thought it was pretty enjoyable. Hopefully it starts to pick up some traction. You know, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it's gonna do like crazy numbers or anything like that, but hopefully like people recognize it and stuff, because I thought it's a pretty fun album. You know, it's nothing too it's not like super like deep or like lyrical or anything like that. It's much more of like a fun album. You can just kind of listen to a bunch of guys just hanging out and rapping together. It's an enjoyable album. I've been just kind of listening to it over the last few days, and I think it's a nice little departure from what Saba released last year, which is a very serious album where he was talking about his depression and just kind of trying to deal with like the trauma of losing his cousin and whatnot. So it was a nice like kind of change of pace from that to this, which is much more carefree, lighthearted, and whatnot. It's a solid album. It's definitely gonna be in rotation for a little longer. But yeah, that's definitely something I'd check out. I also I set up like a thing for me to do, just so I add a little bit of variety to the podcast. Where like 2 weeks ago I said that I was gonna do like a recommended song of the week or whatever, you know, and I didn't really do that, you know. So I guess I'll do recommended album of the week, which will be "You Can't Sit With Us" by Pivot Gang. So I'd recommend checking that out if you want something pretty fun, nothing too emotionally taxing or investment, you know, of an investment, I guess. So I'd recommend checking that out for sure. I think that it's just that like it might have been because like I do listen to like a decent amount of music. I've mentioned this before, but it's not like super. I don't listen to albums like every like couple of days, you know. I listen to a variety of tracks and whatnot. And when it comes to like listening to like country or like folk music and stuff like that, like whenever I do the show, which I'm sort of taking a break from just to focus on like academics and work and whatnot. But whenever I did do the show at the radio station, like I never really like listened to like full albums before I played the music. Usually I just pick out tracks that I think that kind of sound interesting, and then I kind of go from there. It's only like a few artists where I invest time into listening to their like older albums and stuff like that. It's really like I just want that like the one song from their catalog that's like, ooh, that kind of that kind of appeals to me. I like the sound of that, you know. It's kind of difficult to find like a specific sounding song, right? I've mentioned that before. Like there's only a few like sometimes I just only like one song of one artist, you know, and I don't really feel like any of their other music really like strikes a chord with me, mainly because it kind of sounds similar to what other groups or what other artists of that genre are putting out. So it's sort of hard for me to like say like, you know, this is like I like, you know, it's hard for me to say like, oh, I like Johnny Cash and whatnot. I mean, I do like Johnny Cash. It's just that I haven't listened to his entire like discography. You know, I like songs of his for sure, and that goes with a lot of other artists. You know, I just don't. it's just hard for me to like invest a lot of time into listening full albums, I guess. Just because I feel like I'll be like disappointed. I have like an expectation, right? I'm expecting like all the other songs on an album to sound like that first song that I listened to of his or hers or theirs, you know. So I don't know. It's just like it's I don't exactly have like a criteria as to like what constitutes as like a good representation of like the genre or whatnot, you know. But yeah, I'll try my best to, you know, provide some, just give shout outs to like, maybe artists that aren't as like well known, I guess. Even though I don't really have that much of an audience to begin with, but I think it's just kind of fun to just talk about artists that aren't necessarily the most recognized, I guess. So I'll try my best to keep up doing that for sure. I've been pretty positive lately, so I think I kind of want to change gears a little bit because there was this. I'm sure this is not like a very uncommon thing to happen, but I was taking the bus back to my car on campus, and it's just there's just you know there's certain sort of these like kind of reading the room sort of situations, you know, where like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that in this situation. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't start singing on the bus with a bunch of other college students who feel kind of awkward, you know. We don't need to hear your own personal concert. Just like don't do that. I guess that's just that's one thing that happened earlier this week or last week. I was just taking the bus back and like this I couldn't really see who it was, but I'm presuming it was a girl that's just kind of started like like kind of like singing in the back. Like I just like I heard like the first like tone and I just immediately just wanted to get out of there. I just did not want to be on that bus in that moment. It was just so uncomfortable. It's that secondhand embarrassment you feel because you and like everyone else in that bus just feel this just uncomfortability being in that position where you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm not like if they finish singing, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna clap? You know, like it's not like they're a street performer. They're just kind of singing aloud for no reason, and I don't know, like, you know, maybe they're just like a little off. Maybe they have some, I don't know, maybe they just have some deficiency or something like that, but like that's just not really an excuse either, you know? They seemed pretty based on how they were singing, they just seemed like they were they just knew what they were doing, right? They were just kind of singing on a bus. I just don't I don't know. I don't know what goes through people's heads when they do that. You know, just fucking do it somewhere else, you know? Like it's just not it's a very minor thing, but it's just awkward, you know, like just don't put us in this position where we're just kind of cringing, you know, like do you know how we feel when you like do you just have a complete lack of self-awareness when you do that, when you're just kind of singing aloud to like a crowd of disgruntled college students? Like I just don't get that, you know. Also on top of that, like even before that girl started singing, there was another girl who was just talking so loud on her phone. Like that's another thing I don't get. Did I talk about like this? I feel like I've talked about this not the specific thing, but like a similar scenario to that where like there was a guy just talking on the phone and like just completely aloud. He was just like, yeah, you know, like the SAT and like the LSAT and whatever the blah 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 blah. I don't know why he was talking about the SAT. It doesn't really matter. To him, at least it shouldn't, you know. It's like I don't know why he was just talking so loud about some shit. Like do people think, or maybe they just have like a hearing problem? I don't know. I just don't know what goes through people's heads when they're just like, yeah, so I was just on the phone with the branch manager of like fucking, you know, yeah, I don't know, just some company like Microsoft. Like, are you just bragging about shit? Like, I just don't understand that. Like, why? Most people don't care. It's just like you made like a business call with someone. That's impressive, I guess, but just like keep it to yourself, you know? Like, I just don't get that. Like when people, so this other girl which happened on the same time as like the singing girl, like she was just talking about, I don't know, just some personal shit. Like nobody cares, all right? Just nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. I just don't understand that. I just don't understand, like, people just are kind of, I get it, you know, people are self-centered and stuff like that. I can definitely be that way for sure, selfish and whatnot, but just like, just keep it to yourself, you know, like, even if, like, already there's a sign on the bus that said, please don't talk loud on your cell phone. Yeah, just don't use your cell phone at all, because it's going to cause distractions to the people around you and the bus driver too, you know. And like, it's just, I don't know, just, it's just common courtesy. That's the thing, you know. That's just like the one thing that's kind of just irks me a little, you know. But you know, singing and just like talking aloud, it's just like, I don't know, like maybe they're just unaware. Like the talking one is a little less, like the girl that was talking, like she wasn't doing anything like super crazy. She was just talking aloud with some friends maybe about some shit, you know, some drama, whatever. You know, it's like it's not as bad as like the girl that was singing, you know, because the singing, that's kind of that really brings people's attention, you know. You're like, what the you just kind of like, just kind of turn your head around a bit, you know, just like, what the fuck is going on, you know, just like, is there someone singing in the back right now, like doing some acapella or some shit, like what the fuck is going on, you know. It's just, I don't know, I don't get it, you know. It's just like, I don't, I'm not the type of person that just confronts people like head on, you know, especially strangers. Like I'm just not that kind of person. I'm not very like balls to the wall kind of thing, you know. But like sometimes I just wish I had just like the guts to be like, just go to them and be like, you know, not to be like a dick by any means, but just being like, hey, you know, how come you're singing? You know, how come are you practicing for something, right? And then I just get like just sort of get like an idea of what goes through their heads when they're doing that. You know, what's the psychology of that, right? Is it just to get attention? Maybe they're just trying to deal with something. Maybe they had a kind of like a pretty shitty week or something, and they're just kind of trying to get through the week, and they lost their minds a little bit, so they're like singing aloud in a bus. I don't know what the situation is, you know. So maybe that's something I can keep in mind, you know, if I want to just get sort of a, you know, an overview of what's happening in their lives. You know, I don't want to invest myself in it, but like maybe I can just get an understanding of why they do the things that they do. I don't know, just sort of, just you know. But like they themselves should understand that, like, you know, there's people that are also going through some shit. So, you know, just kind of maybe just keep some things to yourself in a way, you know. I'm not here to be like a saint by any means. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know, just have a bit of common social courtesy, you know. Just that's all that I'm saying. So yeah, that's probably the one thing that I kind of wanted to bitch about, I guess. I'm sure there's some things that I want to complain about, but no, I think for the most part it's been a pretty solid week. Nothing too wild, I guess, you know. Okay, the one thing that does annoy me, and this is just me, but like my body and stuff like that, but like I get it's due to like dry weather and stuff like that. So like it didn't happen as much this winter, but last winter when it was like super dry, there was like barely any rain and stuff like that. I was sick for like 2 months. At least that's what it felt like, you know. And during that period, on top of being sick, you know, I got like relatively like periodic like nosebleeds and stuff like that. It's just like it's just, I don't know, it's like a bodily thing that I have to deal with, you know. So it's just like I'm not entirely sure. It's just like I know exactly like my routine. Like if I get a bloody nose, I'm pretty quick to react to it. You know, that's why I have a bunch of like napkins, like in my dashboard, in my glove box, and like in my room and stuff like that. You know, just to make sure, like, okay, if it does happen, if I bleed out, it's just right there. It's just I gotta plug up my nose and whatnot. If I do ever go down, like if I somehow, pass away, it's probably gonna be from like a nosebleed. I'm just gonna bleed out to death from constant just nosebleeds. That's just kind of the way it's gonna go. That's what I'm assuming. Everything else, I'm like, I'm a pretty safe driver. I don't take a whole lot of risks and whatnot. I'm pretty reserved and whatnot. So I feel like I'm not going to endanger myself in most situations. But nosebleeds, that's just something that I can't really control. So if I ever go off, you'll know what happened to me. Anyways, that's probably going to do it for this episode. I fucked up my phone password. There we go. It's going to do it for today. It has been Save the Semantics, signing off.